Kia ora koutou. I'm going to kick off with a karakia while some of you might still be joining. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa ponamu te moana, he huarahi mā tātou i te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa. Hui tai ki e. Kia ora, I'm Lisa Docherty, and I'm really pleased to welcome you to this webinar launch of the first of the Ministry for Regulation's Regulatory Practice Essentials suite of learning materials. If you're less familiar with Zoom, a few notes. One, this is being recorded, so if you have to leave early or if you decide you want to get a friend to check out on this, it will be up on our YouTube page in due course. So you're being recorded now. The chat function has been disabled, but you can, and I do encourage you to ask questions using the Q&A function. So that button, if you're less familiar with Zoom, is in the middle of the bottom of your screen. And just start putting your questions in there. We'll save questions for the end, and obviously you can direct them to one of my panelists or just ask generally, and we will take it from there. But first of all, I'm really happy to introduce you to our guests today. So I have with me Gráinne Moss, Secretary and Chief Executive of the Ministry for Regulation, Vanessa Horne, GM Competition, Fair Trading and Credit at the Commerce Commission, and Steve Watson, GM Immigration Compliance and Investigations at MBIE. Before I give them the floor, I thought I'll give you some quick context about what these quick guides are and how they fit into the ministry's wider project and purpose. What we've been hearing for at least a year is that agencies and individuals are really seeking some accessible knowledge and learning materials on those regulatory foundations. And what we wanted to do was bring those together in ways that they could be of most use. So the quick guides are just the start of it. They're your topic base of foundational knowledge. Each of those topics is being developed into a module, and we'll be pleased to start releasing those modules as well. And in the end, we'll have a suite of 10 topics that cover those regulatory foundations, that what we've heard is what most people need to know. And we can do that in a way that's common to all of us, whether we're working in education or maritime, or whether we're moving across and in different roles. So it's giving that common language to people in New Zealand government who are doing regulatory jobs. That's probably enough of the flavour. Obviously, if you've got questions that we don't answer as we talk, just chuck them in the Q&A. But Gráinne, I've been personally thrilled to see regulatory capability, become a core function of a central agency. Can you tell us a bit about how you see the ministry's role?
Oh, look, thanks very much, Lisa, and thanks as well to everybody who's joined us today, and to my fellow panelists, Steve and Vanessa. Look, I'm also thrilled that capability is part of our mandate, and that it is in a central agency, and that actually we can stand on the shoulders of all of the great work that people did at GREG. So I just really want to mihi to them. People saw a need. GREG was club funded. People did it because they knew it was important, and it's wonderful to see that it's now being recognised as something that should be supported and funded more appropriately, and also made available to anybody who would like to upskill. Regulation is such a core part of everyday New Zealanders' lives. I think, often New Zealanders don't even realise how much of an impact it has. And there is obviously the regulation itself, but then how it is put into practice is the thing that makes a difference in people's lives. And that's why I'm thrilled at capability, because actually the capability is all about how we put it into practice. So I'm thrilled that it's a core function. It's in a function I'm really passionate about, because I do believe it is the link between what people hope and aspire to in terms of safety, in terms of opportunity, in terms of good regulation, but it's the link to actually making the good regulation a reality in practice. So very important part of our role. We do have some other roles. I mean, we do need to look at new regulation, make sure it's fit for purpose. We do need to look at existing regulations. But yeah, I'm thrilled that we've got the opportunity to, as I say, stand on the shoulders of our predecessors and march forward with some more focus, some more funding, and a better mandate to support regulators and as they build their capability and capacity.
Right. Thanks, Gráinne. Our guests are both long-standing contributors to capability building in regulation, both personally, and thank you both, and through their agencies, and in Vanessa's case, more than one. So I guess I'll just turn to both of you and say, why do you stick with this and help with that capability building? What makes it so important for you? Vanessa?
Yeah, I was going to say, Steve, do you want me to jump in first? I think, first of all, it's so great to see the work of GREG coming into the ministry, Gráinne. It's been a decade, I think. Shout out to Keith Munch and Sanjay Raj, who really kept it going over the past few years. And it's great to be on a call with Lisa and Steve, because I think we've been involved in GREG almost every step of the way. So it's excellent to see it coming together into one place. Gráinne, I think huge thank you to you and your team for exhibiting the stewardship that this all needs as well. So it's great. So I think one of the couple of things that I always think about why I keep on investing in these things and saying yes to Lisa whenever she asks me to get involved is, there's probably three things that really stick out to me. First of all, particularly now when we're all resource poor, finding ways to share information and things that already work for all of us as regulators is so important. There's no point in us all trying to reinvent things, and that goes for things that we've tried and it hasn't quite worked as well as the things that have worked. So I think that's my big thing about all of this, sharing these regulatory capability tools is learning from each other. I think the other one that really stands out to me, particularly now I'm in an independent Crown entity, is the foundation of regulatory language isn't necessarily something that everybody understands. We don't all use, or until recently, we don't all use the same definition. We've talked past each other, I think, over the years, because we don't have a defined definition of what does engagement mean, what does an investigation mean, what does enforcement mean. So I think, particularly with these quick guides, we've got some defined terms, which I think are going to be helpful. An example how we've already used them in here is our comms team have got the quick guides, and they're sharing them with the media who ask us questions a lot about what do we do, what does a regulatory do, when we mean something's being investigated, what does that mean? And so I think, Gráinne, these quick guides are going to help us all out there as well. So yeah, it's great. Steve.
Thank you, Vanessa. What I want to talk a little bit about is something you mentioned, and that's the importance of connecting with each other as regulators and sharing our experiences and what we've learned. If I think about myself, I've worked across the employment, the tenancy, and the immigration regulatory systems, as well as sort of a number of others. And what I have found is that most of the problems are common. And the way of putting things into practice is the language is not similar, but what we're trying to do is exactly similar. So just to reinforce your point around that, and one of my experiences across those multiple regulatory systems is that you've got to design practices and regulatory practice that actually adds public value. Otherwise, it almost becomes not enforceable, or you really kind of are exposed to criticism. So one of the ways to add public value is to make sure that you are working consistently with other regulators, sharing information, I'm a big fan of not having 6 cars up the driveway if we can avoid that, and we share again, and that's all about relationships. So one of the things that I have found through investing in this sort of work is that having really positive relationships both across your regulatory system, and often they're in different ministries, or building really positive relationships with other regulators so that you can pick up the phone or pop across and see somebody and have a chat to them, share your experience and learn from that. So yeah, and so I think that having these guides will give us a really good foundation and a really good basis for consistent common regulatory practice, which, as you know, has been a theme of GREG right from the beginning, and I have been involved in this from the beginning. But it's also, I think, as you alluded to, Vanessa, in these times, it's going to allow us to be much more efficient and much more effective in how we regulate harm and reduce harm across all sectors of society in Aotearoa. And that will, of course, lead to some economic benefits and savings for agencies. So, yeah, the key thing, Lisa, that I want to put across is regulation is about relationships, the right relationships with the sectors that you regulate, with the people across your regulatory system and your partner regulatory agencies.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, and Lisa, if I can just build on what Steve was saying, one of the things I'm really passionate about is the opportunity for the ministry to really support those communities that you've talked about, Steve. I think we learn so much more from talking to each other rather than, sending everything up somewhere and then it goes across and then it comes down. And, for those of you on the call, I have had a lot of experience of being the regulated party. So when I was in aged care, which I loved. And actually, Vanessa, it's okay, you don't have to close your ears, because I did used to talk to other aged care providers, but because the government sets the price, it's fine. There's no risk of any kind of cartel behaviour. And actually just sharing with each other how we were managing through regulatory requirements, how we found, things had worked or people had developed ways of managing, or protocols or policies. And again, having that shared language I find really helpful, but just having that community that you could go to and share ideas was much more impactful and I think effective in making me a better regulated party than maybe some of the kind of chalk and talk, for example. So just for everybody on the call, the ministry is very, very committed to continuing on the work of GREG around those communities of practice. And we see, our role is to help provide products such as quick guides. And I'm delighted that we've got them, because I think that common language is important. And I'm thrilled, Vanessa, to hear that you've been sharing them with the media. So because, but that's a really good opportunity to upskill and make sure then that actually in the media and in other places, there's the right conversations about regulation. So that's a great added benefit that we hadn't actually planned for on this. So thanks for that. But yeah, having that common language, but having that opportunity to share with each other. So look, it's something that the ministry is keen to continue to support and build on. So yeah, really look forward to that, because I think that's what makes a difference day to day.
Yeah, again, Vanessa, great to hear you shared with the media, and I think that's part of the kind of maturity of us as regulators now, is while we're starting to build a common language, we want everybody else to understand what we're saying. And an important part of the quick guides was not just that they were sort of those foundational learnings, but they were good ways that we could describe what we do with as little jargon as possible. So obviously it's a profession. There are lots of words, and it's important that we use them in the right place. But it's also really important that the people that we're regulating with and for understand what we're doing. And I would just note that the two in there that I'm particularly proud of getting out is communicating as a regulator and engaging with regulated parties. They're a space that we know is really really important as part of regulatory practice, and that potentially we haven't had as many tools to work with, as many formal tools. We've kind of made it up as we go. So it's been a great exercise in pulling that together and getting really refined about, okay, when am I communicating? How am I engaging? When, you know, stripping back to this idea that I might need to plan an email, you know, rather than just shoot one off. So those have been great pieces of work. It's probably a good time for me just to acknowledge that in order to develop this material, we've been working with over 60 subject matter experts from across about a dozen agencies. So a lot of people contributed to pulling together what we call the knowledge base for these topics. And so in order to make sure that we were drawing on what is common, we went as widely as possible to get all those inputs. And, you know, and I would say even the process of doing that is part of that kind of spirit of being a community of regulators working together to achieve those outcomes. Obviously, they'll be followed up with modules, which will have a few more scenarios and examples. And I think that's what Gráinne is talking to in terms of our communities of practice is we have much more in common than we have different. And that particularly comes to light when talking about real things that have happened, and that you can say, well, here's what I did, and here's what went well, and here's what didn't go well, and people can start to see and learn from each other in there. I'm interested in that learning context for you both, Steve and Vanessa, in terms of in your agencies, because one of the things we were responding to here was this kind of accessible learning, which is something that can be returned to, something that can be pulled on because I've got a problem now, or because I'm sitting down thinking about my professional development. How do you see this working in your agencies, particularly now at a time when, you know, we're all under quite a lot of pressure? I'll start with you, Steve, because you moved your mouth first.
Cool. Okay. I think, as we've already said, that these guides they'll help our regulators understand what it is that's required of them, and they will that they're again a common language, a common learning resource for not only our regulators, but as part of our regulatory system management, we do have to set clear expectations on regulated parties of what's expected of them. Otherwise, we cannot hold them accountable, you know, at some stage through the regulatory process. So these guides will be an amazing resource for our information and education teams and our engagement teams to as a starting point for regulated parties, because when regulated parties, and as Gráinne said before, when they understand what's required of them, it's so much easier to get them on board and get them on the journey of exhibiting the behaviours that are required, because that's really what we want from regulation, is we want people to behave in a way that doesn't cause harm to society. And I think these guides are a really, really good resource to help people understand why we do that.
I think so, Lisa, they'll sort of add to our induction toolkit, I think. So yeah, we have quite a few younger staff coming in, particularly on our and what we call our front door, our inquiries line, so the people who get to answer all the public inquiries and complaints that come into the Commerce Commission. To give them it's fair to say at the moment, I don't think many universities talk about regulatory practice in the way that we're talking about it here. And so I think lots of staff come into probably a lot of our organisations and don't really understand what being a regulator is. And whilst we've got, I think we probably all have got quite good in-depth training material about what does that mean once you're in our organisation, I think these will start to bring together, you know, all of those foundational knowledge for people, you know, alongside those GREG qualifications that Tupeki are still running. I think the other thing that sort of stands out to me is that I think they'll probably raise some questions for people as well. So, you know, I think particularly that engagement one is really, really interesting. I think, Lisa, you're right. It's one that I think lots of us have sort of strayed sometimes probably too close to one way or the other way. And so I think having some clarity around what does that look like will enable a really robust debate, I think, amongst the regulated community. So I think that's really, really great. Yeah, I think they'll just become part of one of those things that you hand over to somebody when they arrive and go, right, let's talk through these, and these are some examples that we've seen over the past few years, and yeah, things like that. So I think they'll just be part of what we talk about.
I'm just seeing in the Q&A, thank you, and please load up your questions. Somebody else reflecting that, Vanessa, that it's great to see the conversations about shared definitions around engagement, and actually saying they'd love to see a centralised point for engagement with communities, because engagement fatigue is very real, and I guess we all know that. One of the things that I would add in there too, to each of the quick guides has a little note on the bottom where you can get back to us with feedback. It's really important, and one of the things that our ministry context enables us to do is that these guides are, you know, the cliched living document. Knowledge builds and grows over time, and we want to be able to reflect that in what we do. So if there's something that's not in there or something that's in there, you know, we want to take all that feedback and get into a process of continually improving and thinking about how we can do this. We've also had a question from Anita around this fiscally constrained environment that, you know, we've all reflected on, and that a lot of agencies do training in sort of one place or other. The question that Anita's asking is if the ministry has any goals to bring agencies together to share training or maximise resources. And I guess, Gráinne, you might want to say something about that. Yeah.
Look, I'm really, really keen on getting people together, as I said. I mean, and you know, building on what Steve said, that communication across, that learning across. So yes, Anita, the plan is to facilitate get-togethers, virtual get-togethers that are not virtual as well from time to time. I mean, we need to be cognizant of that. I mean, it's actually been a feature of nearly all of the jobs I've had. I've been a really active supporter of communities of practice because, I just think they make a real difference. So absolutely, we will be supporting agencies, regulated parties, regulators to come together and to share. And look, the other piece is if there's people that are out there doing something, it doesn't need to be led by us. You know, you might want to tell us, and then we can lean in and support in some way. So I think it's really important. We want to support things that are led by the community of practitioners, not always being the ones that are leading it. We are happy to take the lead from time to time, but don't feel that you can't ask us to play another role. I'm really happy to be in there to support. And if that's, just helping find a space, or, making sure that there's a license for a big Zoom, or maybe if you get together, I have been known to bake the old cake, but I don't know if I can, feed you all. But yeah, really happy to bring people together. I just think it's critical. It just makes things go faster, makes people not feel professionally isolated. It makes us all better at our jobs. I think it just keeps the joie de vivre, alive in all of the work that we do. And it's an opportunity as well for people to tell each other actually that they're doing a good job, because sometimes, we need that, and for people to say to each other, oh my goodness, you did that, Vanessa, I learned that from you. That's really helped me. Because sometimes we can underestimate the impact that we're having by sharing our knowledge. So, I'm a big fan, and yes, we'll be there.
That's what I can vouch for Gráinne's cake baking skills. top class. But also in our team at the ministry, Michael, who works in as a principal advisor, he wants the strap line, and it's quite a good one. It's not that no one's doing it well, it's that we don't know who is doing it. It's like that we know that out there there is great practice happening all the time, and what we want to be able to say is, hey, that was really good, that worked really well, what can the rest of us learn from that? And how can we not spend all the time trying to replicate something that already exists within our community? Quite a good question on this for you, Vanessa and Steve, around this from Brendan. He's involved in a program of work that involves auditing against industry standards, including compiling legislative requirements. It works at multiple levels, so, not just my own agency. So one of the challenges is how to integrate and collaborate with other agencies to drive those regulatory changes. Any thoughts or experiences on that?
I'm happy to go first on this one. So like Steve, I've worked in lots of regulatory agencies, and the sort of example that comes to mind when I think about particularly standards and the working across is it must have been MB policy at the time, but working with WorkSafe on major hazard regulations, I think they were probably called. And so multiple government agencies, multiple professional bodies, all with quite different ideas and all with quite different timeframes as well. The thing that really worked in that instance was to actually get those people together on site at a major hazard facility. I mean, I know that sounds like like from a health and safety perspective, it took a lot of paperwork, but actually it's the best thing that we could possibly do, because it meant that all those agencies trying to work out which standards we would be using, how we were implementing, what the transition period was going to look like, how it was going to intersect with HASNO and all sorts of other things. Because we were there on site, I think it meant that people immediately could understand exactly what those regulated parties needed from us. And we were almost doing on-site testing if it was this standard that we were trying to use, and then we'd look outside and they'd say, well, it's not going to work because we're already 5 years ahead of that standard. So that, I mean, I don't know if that's going to work for you, Brendan, but that was just something that changed the dial for us, getting everybody together actually where the work was going to put the right sort of safety things in place.
I love that, Vanessa. It kind of like actually physically gets rid of those agency boundaries when you're all just out there in the world.
That's what we're trying to do together as regulators. We're not trying to be within our own box. That's that stewardship concept. Steve.
Just picking up on that theme, and in an operational sense here at MB, we're trying to integrate our regulatory practice across the multiple regulatory systems that we have, and what we're looking to do, and where we've had some success, is where you identify the problem at a reasonably high level, the problem that you're trying to solve, and then you determine what the shared interests are of the various regulators, and that requires people to think outside of their silos, and it requires a competency and a skill set of understanding a little bit about the other regulatory systems and what they can do and what they can offer in terms of levers, and that's harder than it sounds, and it's harder than I'm making it sound, because there's the information sharing challenge, which we can overcome by following the legislation and with good practice, and then there's how you measure it. So where I would say that it has been successful is a problem that intersects across multiple regulatory systems, identifying someone to lead it, and then the other groups all kind of work to their shared interest, and we combine joint planning, joint execution, and then sort of working out which are the best levers to push to reduce the harm or hold or solve the problem, really.
So
Yeah, I
Lisa,
think
I've just seen a couple of other questions on the chat there, so
Yeah.
people keep them coming. There's one from somebody about approaching regulated parties, regulators when they're not behaving as well as they should be. And I thought, given my experience of being a regulated party, it might be helpful if I share some thoughts on that one. So I think, I mean, look, I've had to actually do this. So this is from direct experience. I think the really important thing is to play the issue, not the person. So separate out, you know, it's not Lisa's fault, it's not Vanessa's fault, it's not Steve's fault. What has happened is there seems to be a tension, and actually articulate that. So I'll give an example in aged care. We had one of the DHBs who had a very strong view about something was actually sat outside regulation. It was about how we located our incontinence pads. And actually, to be honest, that is a choice for the regulated party. There is really, you know, it was about the regulator overstepping in terms of trying to dictate the operational, you know, ways of working of the facility. And it also wasn't preventing any harm. There was no good quality control reason. It wasn't like we had the incontinence pads in the kitchen or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So I mean, what I did was I just explained, you know, how we operated the facility, actually why this was all covered in terms of all of the policies that we already complied with, but also highlighted that in the kind of the proportionality of this intervention was inappropriate. And I explained to them how much work the proportion, you know, it had created for us that actually hadn't benefited a single patient or improved safety. I put that very professionally, I put it very politely, but I made them understand how their behaviour fitted into the broader perspective of their regulatory role. I didn't just focus in on the single issue, nor did I focus in on the person who was, you know, wanting to, you know, influence that level of operation. So hopefully that's helpful to people.
It's great. I think the thing that we found when teasing out that both communicating and engaging is that that the engagement takes time. So it's that, you know, sort of building trust and being able to have those conversations and being invited in as part of the regulatory system, which is something that, you know, some of our regulators are more comfortable with than others, and we've got a great range of different regulated parties that are at different stages of maturity. But I always say, you know, and ideally in a mature system, there, you know, we are closer to all working towards the same goal, which it sounds like your example, Gráinne, kind of really talked to, which is, you know, we're all in this, and here's what it looks like from where we are.
I think the other thing, Lisa, on that is not just in times of bad as well. I mean, I think that's something that it's hard for all of us to find the time to do. But certainly from dealings with regulated parties here at the Commission, you know, with some of our big New Zealand corporates, we do try to have a bit more of a contextual conversation a couple of times a year. So it's not just about regulatory responses. So it's just just building in a bit of a habit to build those relationships appropriately, of course, and you know, we're really, really careful to separate out those more general stakeholder engagements from compliance and enforcement conversations. But it's a lot easier to do that if you've got that relationship and you understand a little bit more about each other's context as well, because I think sharing that it does help to understand where everybody's coming from as well.
Yeah, and I think when there's a couple of modern sort of theories around regulation around what's called the legal model or the expert model, and I think moving towards the expert model, which is where the regulator kind of gets to choose and has discretion to choose what they focus on, because they're not, and it goes back to my point about adding value. You don't want to focus on activity that adds no value. which is the example that Gráinne gave, and it also we have a number of subject matter experts in the regulatory field, and when they understand the sector's aspirations and goals and what it is that they're trying to achieve for the community, then it's easier to tailor a regulatory response or an assessment framework.
As somebody's added in that context into the Q&A, that we kind of need to recognise all of the obligations that are placed on businesses, so as regulators, and it's that kind of getting the outside in view back into place. We're coming close to the end of the webinar, which has surprised me. It seems to have flown by. Please, if you've got a question, I'll give you sort of the next 30-40 seconds to throw one in. There are a few questions there, Gráinne, about the ministry that I wondered if you might want to answer briefly, sort of broader than our capability building pieces, but I think talking about what the ministry hopes to achieve in 2 to 3 years' time. So maybe you'd like to talk to that while we give a few last chances for questions.
Sure. So I think there's a couple of things on that, Lisa. I think if there is questions that we don't get time to answer, I'm really happy to work with the other panelists and we can maybe get answers to those people. So, I mean, it's great to have more questions than we can answer. So thanks, everybody. But don't hesitate to put them in because we will find a way of getting you an answer. I think, in 2 to 3 years' time, there's a range of outputs or outcomes that we want. I mean, if I'm thinking about regulators and their practice, I would like people, like Vanessa, like people on this call, like Steve, to say, actually, the ministry made a difference. They produced high quality resources, they connected communities, they made a difference to the quality of the practice of regulators. I find them helpful, and actually my job is easier and I do it better because they exist. I think in terms of new regulation, I would like to see that any new regulation that comes into existence, people say actually the Ministry of Regulation helped us make that an appropriate regulation. They helped us with weighing the costs and the benefits. They gave us good challenging thinking, and they asked us hard questions like, do you really need a regulation for that? What are you actually trying to resolve? What is your problem? And is this the right solution? I mean, I think the other piece is, we will be looking at some of our reviews in terms of helping regulatory systems. So, there'll be individual work on reviews. And where we've done a review, I would like people to be saying, actually, again, the difference. So, we do have a strategic intentions document that's on our website that starts to give a flavour. However, I would say to those of you out there on this call, I mean, there's still really room to influence what this ministry does. We are still really new. We are a little toddler. There's, we've got 32 permanent staff at the minute. But it's really, really important that we respond to what people see as the needs out there. We won't be able to respond to all of them, but you do have an opportunity to influence what we're doing. So we're easy to find, hello@regulation.gov.nz. And it really keen to hear from people in terms of what you think we're doing well, what we need to do more of, and what we need to do less of, and not just now, but as we go down the journey for the next few years.
Right. Thank you all for your positive feedback. There's one question around were the leaders of regulatory systems in mind when the quick guides were put together. And yes, we're always thinking about regulatory leadership, and it's really one of the key focuses for the ministry to provide support for regulatory leaders to do their best, and part of that is by kind of building that foundational capability with tools and things that can help them along, and of course just bringing leaders together like we have today, and allowing many more of you to hear from them. On that, just any final reflections from you, Vanessa and Steve, and thank you again for saying yes again.
Again.
Just one final word from me, and that is thank you for what you do. Be proud of what you do, because you really do make a differess for Aotearoa.
Yeah, and I think Steve and I come from the same cloth, I suspect. I was going to say it's a real privilege to be a regulator in New Zealand, and I think it's something that we do have to remember as a group as well. It's not something that any of us go into lightly, and that's a good thing. The work that we need to do is often hard, but it's a privilege.
All right, thank you. And any final reflections from you, Gráinne?
Look, I think for me, what's come really through in this is it's the community and the people, and we're here to support and be part of that community. And look, thanks for all of your support, for welcoming us in and helping us be part of the journey. As Vanessa and Steve said, it's a privilege to be part of the regulatory landscape, and look forward to seeing what we can all do together.
Brilliant. Yes, thank you all for coming. Thank you for your feedback. As Gráinne said, you can contact us, hello@regulation. We've got in the chat, you'll have some links there if there are things you want to, go and follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to the newsletter. We've got, all the socials. But for now, I just want to say thanks so much for your support today, but also leading up to today and sort of getting this piece of work off the ground and providing that collective knowledge for us to share. I'll just close now with a karakia. Thank you. Kia whakaarea te tapu, kia wātia ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataka ai, hui e, taiki e. Have a good afternoon, everyone.